What's good, YouTube? It's remember what's good back in another video. This board is actually insane. I think this deck is going to be a very underrated sleeper, at least top 3 of the format. Yes, it's voiceless, and as you can see here, this is a full end board off just 1 card with 5 cards in hand, including Cerberus protecting our monsters from targeting, as well as Barrier doing the same thing. We have an Omni Negate in form of Skull Guardian, as well as Authority, which allows us to summon a Cerberus or pop a card. Guys, here's how you can do this. So this is one of the only 1-card starters in the deck, unfortunately, but this 1 card gets you to everything. There is one other 1-card starter, which we'll get to in a second, but it's not really in engine. We're talking specifically about NOVOX, aka Low, which is a new localized name. I don't know why, but I'm not even getting that bag of beans because I hate how they changed the name. Anyways, NOVOX, the Voiceless Voice Disciple. Obviously, if you're normal summoner or special summoner, you could actually place 1 continuous spell or trap voiceless card from your deck directly to the field. So in this case, placing the Barrier. Now the Barrier is really nice. This is part of the lock because it prevents your opponent from targeting any of your light monsters with card effects while you control NOVOX alongside any light ritual monster, which is easily set up. And then once per turn, we can actually add a voiceless card or a Skull Guardian ritual monster from our deck to our hand. So important thing to note is that Silent Forcer Barrier, or Voiceless Barrier rather, allows us to add any of the voiceless cards, not just monsters. So you technically can add, say, for example, the Ritual Spell or the Trap as well. But in this case, let's say this is our only starter. We are obviously going to add a copy of Saphira. Saphira is really nice because she allows you to discard and then use the effect to actually Foolish a copy of a Ritual Spell. Any Ritual Spell, actually. There are a couple other Ritual Spells in the game that benefit from being sent, but most of the time you just want to play the End Engine one, which allows you to special summon a ritual monster when a ritual monster is removed by your opponent's card effects. So it's very nice. And then from there, we can actually add from our graveyard or from our deck to our hand 1 light, dragon, or warrior ritual monster. Specifically, it has to be a ritual monster though, so careful thing, you cannot actually add NOVOX with Saphira. But although another thing to note is that Saphira can actually add from the graveyard too, which is good and bad. The good thing is obviously, you know, you have endless resources. You don't need resources in deck. The bad part is you can get ghost spelled. So that's just one thing to note, be very cautious of. But the other thing to note about this card specifically is the fact that it doesn't have to add the card. So it says you can discard the card, send 1 ritual spell from your deck to the graveyard, then you can add 1 light warrior monster or dragon ritual monster. So if you're under draw, you can still legally activate this to send a copy of the spell. And then we can use the effect in the graveyard, which you can banish to actually ritual summon. So this serves as a ritual spell, which is really nice. And then from there, we can actually tribute off NOVOX, aka Low, as the entire tribute. This works a lot like Shurit, the Necroz card. And then from here, we get to special summon out the Skull Guardian, can build the chain. Now, personally, I'm putting all my monsters in defense mode in this format because I do not want the Fire King monsters nor Snake Eye stuff to crash. For example, Hida can also crash and search out Populace. So I'm putting everything in defense mode. I don't care if my defense is a lot less than the attack, because this attack actually does go to 4,100 the minute that NOVOX hits the table. But 2,500 is ample enough where not a lot of stuff that they control can swing over before we actually prompt the negate of Skull Guardian. So just, I'm putting in defense mode. Now, you can structure your chains. You can go Chainlink 1, Skull Guardian to add, because when these ritual summon, you can actually add a voiceless monster from your deck to your hand, or you can go Chainlink 1, NOVOX. So depending on what you want to play around. Do you want to play around Ash or Bell? Game 1, generally, no one's main-decking Bell, so there's no real point to play around it. So I just go Chainlink 1, Skull Guardian, Chainlink 2, NOVOX. But game 2 and 3, I definitely want to play around the Bell, right? So we're always going to probably go NOVOX, Chainlink 1, and then the Skull Guardian, Chainlink 2 there, so we can play around. And chances are Ash is probably already gone if you've already gone through these cards. So generally, it's probably correct to Ash the first cards that this deck actually does, because they do have some consistency issues. Now, this is basically the end board after we search. I like to search a copy of the Cerberus, which allows us to actually discard to protect from a targeting effect that would target a monster we control. But you can also search another card for follow-up if you already have Cerberus, for example. Now, from here, Game 1 specifically, what I think is actually okay to do is to link off directly into the Dynamundo, and then during our opponent's turn, we can actually use a quick effect during the draw step to tribute itself and target a ritual monster that was special summoned successfully, obviously, in our graveyard. Special summon that back, and then we do not get the effect of Skull Guardian, unfortunately, because it's only when it's ritual summoned, but you can trigger the effect of NOVOX to actually special summon back, because this is whenever a light warrior or dragon ritual monster is special summoned, not just a ritual summon. So this becomes 4,100 again. Then from here, why is this important? Well, we can actually trigger off the NOVOX during our opponent's turn to set up the trap. So this is really nice. So now we have the authority online as well. And Authority is really nice to have because it does one of two things. During the main phase, you can actually shuffle a Light Warrior or Dragon Ritual monster or Ritual spell from your hand or graveyard to the deck, and then take a Voiceless monster from your deck and special summon it or add it to your hand. So that's really, really easy to set up the other Ceravis, which is actually the monster form. Now, key thing to note is that ritual monsters actually cannot be special summoned directly from the deck unless the card effect text specifically states you can special summon a ritual monster from your deck to the field. If it does not state you can special summon a ritual monster, in the case of Authority, you actually cannot special summon a ritual monster, which is why we go off into Ceravis, the Sagely Voiceless Dragon, because this card says when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can return this to your hand to special out a Light Warrior or Dragon Ritual monster from our hand or a deck. So we can actually respond to any of the chains. The first thing they do to summon out is Ceravis, which is really, really cool. And then from there, we actually have the Ceravis effect to prevent them from going into a non-inherent special summon, or inherent rather, and then we can negate that and then bounces back to our hand. So we have the effect. It's not once per turn either, so we can use that both effects in one turn. Now, the other thing you can do if you just want to go for the pop is you can actually just leave that ritual spell in the graveyard and then use the effect of Authority to send itself and then pop up to one card. Now, this is obviously a lot better when we do have multiple ritual bodies on the field, because then Authority can pop up multiple cards. And then on top of that, we still have the Prayer effect in our graveyard. So when they do actually get rid of the Skull Guardian, we can use the effect of Prayer to special summon out either a Ceravis or another Skull Guardian to still have that negate if we didn't use it already, right? So this is actually really, really nice to have. Never forget that grave interaction. Now, this is quite a bit of disruptions if you think about it, right? If we do set up using the Authority, then we have the Omni Negate in the form of Skull Guardian. We have a barrier that protects our monsters from being targeted. Also, our monsters basically cannot be destroyed by battle. Only Skull Guardian can be attacked, so they cannot actually attack NOVOX. And then we have a pop as well, and then we have a potential disruption in the form of removing a targeting effect with Ceravis in our hand, right? So got that 2 disrupts. We have Mad Follow-Up, Insane Follow-Up, and card ability in the graveyard as well, which is really nice. Now, the key thing about Dynamundo is Ghost Spell is obviously really, really high impact. So make sure that you guys do not do this in game 2 and game 3 unless you're certain that they don't have the Ghost Spell, or if you have like Call by the Grave as a preventative measure against the Ghost Spell. You can kind of gauge if they have Ghost Spell or not, because they're probably going to use that on something like a starter, like Saphira or potentially Pre-Prep, because Pre-Prep actually adds from the graveyard as well. But if they didn't do that and you resolved all the cards, chances are they don't have the Bell. Now, there is a chance that they do top deck the Bell as a 6th card, right? There's a non-zero chance. So make sure you do account for that before going to Dynamundo, which can actually backfire hard if they have a Call by the Grave or a Ghost Bell, which just negates it completely, right? So half the time it might be more correct to just leave the board with the Skull Guardian and the NOVOX game 2 and game 3. But for the purpose of setting up the trap, we had to go to Dynamundo so we could use the effect of NOVOX on our opponent's turn. Obviously, the other card that we didn't talk about, the 1-card starter, is Diviner the Herald. This is not an in-engine card. It's not actually a voiceless card, obviously, but you do just send the Trias Hierarchia, which allows you to quick effect tribute a fairy monster you control. So you can obviously tribute the Diviner. You guys already know how this goes. Diviner gets tributed, and then from there you bring out the low and then use the effect, or the NOVOX. I'm already getting used to calling it by its new name, which I should refuse to do because NOVOX is the actual name we're used to. Okay, so now we're going to use the effect and then scale the or activate the barrier, and this is just the same combo again. The nice thing is that Hierarchia is actually a light monster that can be tributed. It's a level 9, so it can be easily tributed potentially for a copy of Ceravis or something else down the line, or if you want to play around like a Bistio or a DD Crow, you could potentially just tribute that instead of the NOVOX. So it's just neat interaction there. The thing I don't particularly like about this card is that it does conflict as your normal summon spot. So if you already have access to NOVOX, then it becomes very, very terrible. It does increase the consistency of the deck slightly, but you're also vying for 4 non-engine slots that you could potentially play in place of Diviner, because I think the deck is somewhat consistent already. It plays, like if you think about a deck like Unchained, they only had the 3 1-card starters in the form of Tour Guide. Everything else was 2-card starters or multiple card starters. You needed a trap plus a monster. And in this deck, you have a lot of ways with 2+ cards to just set up your combos. You know, you have cards like Pre-Prep, which just set you up with a ritual spell plus a monster. You know, you have a bunch of different cards like Barrier that you can draw. You have the Queen that you can draw. There are a lot of ways. As long as you can get access to a Skull Guardian, you can start searching, and half the time you're going to set up your plays anyways. So I feel like almost like 3 starters could potentially be enough, and I've seen a lot of the OCG kind of trending towards that direction as well, cutting Diviner, because Diviner also getting imprint feels really bad. You can't really do anything with it. It's a level 2 monster, can't easily tribute it. Whereas, you know, the NOVOX, we can still kind of do something there. So now the other cool thing about this deck is you can play a lot of high impact, powerful spell cards, a lot of which are instant +1 gratifications. You know, you can play cards like Pre-Prep, which allow you to add a ritual spell plus a ritual monster. You can even add something like a Cerebus if you already have combos, so then you have targeting protection from cards like Imperm and Veiler, which is really cool. There's Pot of Prosperity, which I actually think is better to the alternative Pot of Extravagance. You know, the OCG are playing that because they're Prosperities that won, and you know, Prosperity I think is such a good card that this is probably better than Extrav because you can actually dig for the card you want. And then into Droll, this is a lot better because you can actually pick a card that allows you to help play through Droll by instantly ritual summoning, right? If you can add like a NOVOX or something that you actually need instead of gambling for random 2 cards. Then Nadir Servant, this is not really a starter, but it's nice because you can obviously send the Garura, so you get a lot of value. It's like a engage on crack. You're obviously able to add the Dogmatica Maximus, which nice thing is that not a lot of the other decks have anything good to send, so you're actually ripping your opponent's extra deck at the same time because both players send 2. So, you know, being able to just summon out the Maximus, which is also a light monster that can be tributed later on for ritual summons, and then being able to send, you know, I don't really have anything good to send in the extra deck here, but you can probably play other cards like Cloud Beast Malong maybe, or Cyframe Omega, and then Herald will allow you to add a copy of a Cerebus or like a Skull Guardian to get you started, but you do still need another card to combo with that. And then the other thing is obviously this plays into Ash, as well as Droll Knockbird, which is just horrendous. You know, when we activated the Nadir Servant and then sent the Garura and added Maximus, if that resolved and they hit us with a draw, it's just like very, very backbreaking. So just something to think about there. There's a lot of ways to play this deck, but I think if you build it right, it can actually be very, very threatening in the metagame.
Really quickly, if you guys aren't already subscribed to the channel, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button at the bottom. It'll go a long way to support the channel. Other than that, thanks a lot for tuning in.
So guys, this is an example of what you can do with the deck. You can see we have a lot of hand traps. We have 15 hand traps, and then the 2-9 engine with the Called By and the Triple Tactics Talent. You can definitely sculpt it the way you want. Obviously, I think Prosperity is a must in this deck because you do have consistency issues sometimes. And the deck's fairly standard. The extra deck can use some tweaking. I'm deciding to play all the Charmers. I realize there's a lot of Drolls running around and stuff. And what you can actually do that's really funny is go into a Charmer and then rank up into your own Princess. Yes, this is a generic card. And then if you happen to have Ash Blossom already in your graveyard, or if you're going to Hida via an Ash line, you can just go off into the Ambler Whale, which is kind of cool. And then Summon Limit is really, really devastating in the side deck when you do have that Omni Negate live. It's oftentimes just game ending. The problem with this deck is going second is really, really hard, guys. So if you guys have a good way to actually consistently be able to stop your opponent and not brick and have engine, then definitely I think this deck could be a top contender. I think it's top 3 as is, but it's very underrated. We'll see what happens. Now, one broken thing you can actually play when you play Diviner is actually Econ going second, because when they try to negate the Diviner, you can chain the Econ, and then because Diviner gets tributed, you can actually special summon out the NOVOX directly from your deck. So this is a really spicy interaction that you can do, and because none of these monsters actually lock you in a link summoning or anything, you can actually start link climbing and just go into your full combo, guys. So really, really cool deck. I think the deck is insanely good going first, equally probably as good as Fire King, honestly, going first, but going second is where the problems lie. So if you guys are able to kind of solve the going second issue, then I think this deck is like one of the best decks, hands down. Definitely tier 1. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments below about this deck so far. Are there any ways we can improve it? And then which build do you prefer? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys in the next video.